Mr. N, the owner of the 5-acre plot, had set a reasonable price and seemed friendly and sincere. Yet risks were involved in such transactions, and in this case, Prabhupada found reasons for suspicion. Through his lawyer, he learned that Mr. N had previously entered into an agreement to sell the same land to the C company, but had later cancelled the agreement. The C company had then filed a suit against Mr. N for breach of contract. If the Bombay High Court decided in the C company's favor, the land would be awarded to them. When Prabhupada's secretary questioned Mr. N about this entanglement, Mr. N assured him the C company could not win the suit. But in any case, ISKCON could withhold a certain portion of the payment until the litigation with C was settled. Mr. N was a well-known figure in Bombay, formerly the sheriff of Bombay and an honorary judicial police position. He was now publisher editor of one of the largest daily English newspapers in Bombay. He was wealthy, owning several properties in Juhu and Bombay, and influential, not a man one would want to oppose. To purchase the Juhu land under the present circumstances required boldness. In the late December, Prabhupada met with Mr. and Mrs. N at their home in the Theosophical Colony in Juhu. Mr. N's home was on the beach, and thus the visit afforded Prabhupada another opportunity to appreciate the value and beauty of Juhu Beach with its border of palms towards the sea. The Theosophical Colony was a private neighborhood of attractive homes with luxuriant lawns and flower gardens and many exotic birds. Ashoka trees grew on either side of Mr. N's driveway, and a line of palm trees standing just inside the massive stone wall encircled the property. A gardener opened the gate for Prabhupada and the few disciples with him. Mr. N was a short, stocky man with a receded hairline. His hair was clipped short, and his round face was pockmarked. He appeared to be in his 50s. Mrs. N had a fair complexion and unusual for an Indian, wore her hair short. Prabhupada had brought flower garlands and prasadam from the Radhakrishna deities of ISKCON Bombay, and these he offered to Mr. and Mrs. N. Mr. N invited his guests to sit with him and his wife on the front porch, which faced a picturesque garden. Srila Prabhupada openly expressed his appreciation of the Juhu land, but admitted he had very little money. Mr. N, however, seemed inclined towards Prabhupada and said he wanted to sell him the property. Quickly, they reached a verbal agreement. To Mrs. N, however, the agreement seemed too liberal. But when she objected, her husband overruled her. Prabhupada and Mr. N agreed on a down payment of 200,000 rupees. After making the down payment, ISKCON would immediately receive the conveyance. Prabhupada would pay the remaining balance of 1,400,000 rupees later in regular installments. Prabhupada negotiated further regarding the down payment, offering 50,000 rupees now and another 50,000 later, at which time ISKCON would be allowed to move onto the land. As soon as they paid the remaining 100,000 rupees, the down payment would be complete and Mr. N would give them the deed. Mr. N agreed. Srila Prabhupada was always one to think carefully over such business transactions. He had said that if a businessman tells you, "Sir, for you, I'm making no profit," you should know he's lying. Therefore, even in ISKCON's early days in New York City, when the real estate shark, Mr. Price, had posed as a well-wisher of the devotees, Prabhupada had been suspicious. Mr. Price had in fact cheated the devotees despite Prabhupada's warning to them. Now, as then, Prabhupada was suspicious, but he wanted the Juhu land and would take the risk. Prabhupada had taken similar chances. At Jhansi in 1953, he had occupied a building, although he had little legal standing or financial security. And in his first storefront in New York, as well as his largest building to date, the Wataska Avenue Church in Los Angeles, he had moved in without assurance of the monthly payments. Practically, the entire success of his movement had come by his taking one risk after another for Krishna. When the devotees in Boston had and had even commended their example to others. So if some risks involved in Bombay, that was only natural. Once committed to the land, Robert began to unfold his vision for a grand project in Bombay. On December 22, he wrote Yamuna. Here in Bombay, we have we have got good prospects to purchase a very large land in Juhu for a very cheap price, just in the middle of a rich neighborhood. We shall build our camp there and begin constructing a temple immediately, and later on, we shall develop a large hotel and school. There is also a chance of getting a nice bungalow in Bombay city also. So in general, we shall make our headquarters in Bombay and also build up Vrindavan and Mayapur. While devotees around the world delighted to hear Prabhupada's plans for a Bombay center, devotees in Bombay had mixed feelings. To envision a temple rising from what was little more than a jungle tract was not easy. Nor was it easy to envision the five-star ISKCON hotel Prabhupada spoke of. The tenement building in the rear of the land was fully occupied, and according to Indian law, the tenants could not be removed. If the devotees moved onto the land, they would have to erect temporary housing, maybe even a temporary temple, and the land was mosquito ridden and teeming with rats. Juhu was a small, almost isolated neighborhood without wealthy ISKCON supporters. Speculators predicted that Juhu would grow. At present, it was only a village of about 2,000.